In Moscow, Putin is watching closely while heavily bombarding the people of Ukraine. Retired General Ben Hodges led U.S. forces in Europe, and he's been a strong supporter of Ukraine and of what's at stake on the battlefield and off. And he joins me now from Frankfurt, Germany. General Hodges, welcome back to the program. We've often spoken about what needs to happen, and you've often had an optimistic view of what Ukraine can manage with full U.S. support. Are you concerned at the moment that this support is in question?
Yes, I am, Christian. This war is at a tipping point. We, the West, I'm very proud of what the administration and the West have done and what we have provided Ukraine, but we have failed the critical test of deciding what is the strategic outcome that we want. We have not said we want Ukraine to win. And so because of that, we've been hesitant and incremental in decision-making and approving what would be sent to Ukraine. And so we've stopped short of providing them what they needed to actually win. The Kremlin has adopted a long war strategy because they can see that they have no other hope except to wait for us to give up. That's why they feed hundreds of thousands of soldiers into the meat grinder every day to convey the impression that they have endless resources, because they can see that we are beginning to get tired or lose interest. And every time the Congress stumbles like they are right now or hesitates, that's oxygen for the Kremlin's desire for this long war strategy.
I just want to ask you, because the congressional vote is incredibly important and Zelensky is there trying to make his case. You've probably seen these kinds of things before, or maybe not. Has this kind of funding for a key American international national security issue being held up by a recalcitrant Congress? And in your mind, what should the administration do? Should it agree to to more, whatever it takes, compromise on the immigration and border security?
Well, this is not the first time, of course, that funding has been held up for different reasons. That's not new. I think what's new is for the first time in my life, that the Republican Party has turned its back on Ukraine and is enabling Russian aggression. This is the party of Reagan. I never would have imagined that. This is a sea change in American foreign policy. Now, the burden is also, though, on the administration. The president and his team have got to explain to the American people why this is in our interest. Speaker Johnson is not correct when he says they need to focus on American security. This is about American security. This affects our economy. It affects the possibility of us ending up in a NATO conflict. And of course, China is watching. If the Chinese see that we lack will and industrial capacity, then I don't think they'll be too impressed with anything that we say about the Indo-Pacific region.
Can I just ask you to lay it on the line for Americans and maybe even people in Congress? If the Ukrainians were not the foot soldiers in their own war against this Russian invasion, if, Russia had invaded a NATO country, would we not see American boots on the ground or such thing? I mean, in other words, isn't Ukraine doing America and the West work for it in this case?
Actually, Ukraine is doing exactly what NATO was created to do, was to stop Russia from invading or devouring Europe. Not one American soldier has been lost in this conflict. So in relative terms, a very small percentage of our defense budget, Ukraine has taken about 300,000 Russian soldiers off the battlefield, has wrecked, plus the sanctions we're doing, has wrecked Russia's defense industry. They're having to import really poor quality artillery ammunition from North Korea and drones from Iran. So Ukraine is doing something that helps us. It protects all of Europe. And they're not asking for American troops. They're just asking for the tools to actually win.
Can I ask you whether it sounds plausible to you? The U.S. has released some figures that around 87% of Russia's active duty ground forces are no longer there, the ones that existed before, February 2022 and now. Does that ring reasonable to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Russians have had to, from the original 140, 150,000 that they started with back in February last year for the large-scale invasion, since then, They have gone through a couple of partial mobilizations. They have emptied their jails. They have pulled all of their troops away from the border with Finland, Estonia, and Latvia, as well as some of the troops that they have stationed in Georgia, um, in order to feed the machine that they have in Ukraine. They have lost an enormous amount of casualties on top of equipment, ships, aircraft. They have been attrited significantly, yes.